What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope all is well wherever you are. We hope you're happy, safe, healthy, and that you enjoyed watching the Dallas Cowboys play against a different team. That's right, Thursday, August 11th. 2022, 2 days ahead of the preseason opener, the Dallas Cowboys held a joint practice with the team who they will see Saturday night in the Denver Broncos. We learned a lot. A bit of an interesting practice as far as training camp is concerned. Not exactly the same sort of accessibility for the local media to be able to tweet out highlights and things like that. But thankfully, the Dallas Cowboys team at the mothership at DallasCowboys.com was streaming part of the practice, which means we got to, learn a little bit of, stuff, but we have a lot to get into based off of this little bit of stuff. But as we do, we would love for you to vote in the poll option that we have introduced here on the Blog and the Boys YouTube channel. Please do subscribe right here. We're wondering because there's obviously a lot to kind of figure out when it comes to this team. What are you the most worried about? I do think that the practice kind of highlighted some of the concerns that we've had. So let us know what you think in our poll option over on your right side. But let's go ahead and just kind of look. It's important to note. I saw a friend of the show, John Owning from PFF, made this point, and we've talked about this relative to the kicking competition that's going to be unfolding, and obviously we're going to see some kicks happen on Saturday night at Mile High Stadium. I know that's not the official name, but whatever. This is an elevation that's worth mentioning. You know, the Cowboys did get kind of outworked a little bit from a physicality standpoint. At least that's the way it seemed. So that's something to consider. We know that the Cowboys obviously are hell-bent on becoming more physical, on not getting outworked. That's kind of been a big mantra of this season for the Cowboys. They were a little bit too soft against the 49ers last year. I think we all know that. We all recognize that. I think that they know that and they recognize that. And so, that's something to kind of keep in mind is the elevation. Kevin, what's up? Kevin says, worried about our offensive line. I think it'll be our undoing this season. Thank you for voting in our poll. Swing tackle is an option, and swing tackle was a point of weakness that was on display. Very quickly, before we kind of get into the specifics of what happened out in Denver this afternoon, tight end Ian Bunting and defensive tackle John Ridgway both left the practice field and went to the locker room. So we'll see what happens, see if there's any update there. We'll, of course, keep you updated as we continue to unfold. We are live, by the way. I know some of you are going to watch this later after the fact. It's about 2:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. So no news right now on Ian Bunting or John Ridgway, but they both did walk off under their own power, so hopefully both are well. But let's get started. Let's start with a very positive note. The Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb connection appears to be thriving. Dak, CeeDee, look, take all the overs, whatever overs or whatever over-unders you can find, take all of the overs. This is one of the things we've been worried about over the offseason, whether or not CeeDee can assimilate himself to true wide receiver one status. Can he become the alpha? Can he become the leader? Can he become the top dog? All signs throughout camp have pointed to yes, this is a different thing. This is a practice, a simulation against a different team, and we saw a lot of success between Dak and CeeDee, which certainly leads to the idea that we're going to see it week in and week out throughout the regular season.
Isaac Alarcon flex between the guard and tackle because they're trying to figure out that position.
Prescott in the triple coverage, and he's still.
I know the video is a bit choppy. That's not your internet connection. Don't worry. Don't call your provider. It's just the trials and tribulations. Teams are so crazy with how they approach stuff like this. They don't allow for tons of reporting or tons of video to be shot and captured. So we got to kind of do some work around things, but it is still cool to be able to see this. That was just kind of your standard run-of-the-mill, normal first down pass, but they did hook up for a touchdown. That was, again, a really great sign, really great point, really great piece of evidence as to the fact that CeeDee Lamb's going to have quite the season in 2022. Love to see it. Great job, Dak. Great job, CeeDee. Touchdowns are obviously the most important thing in this game, and I think that again, we've spent so much time talking about the wide receiver position, worrying about the wide receiver position, wondering who's going to be able to play outside of CeeDee Lamb. That's kind of the question, right? We know, or at least we trust, that CeeDee is going to be this viable option for the offense. But with Michael Gallup out for a little bit of time, with James Washington out for a little bit of time, with Jalen Tolbert being a rookie, could Noah Brown or Noah Brown or Simi Fehoko truly carry this team? Do we have to have the Cowboys? Do they need to bring somebody in? Do they need to add a veteran to the mix? I mean, those are all still very valid questions. There was no real pop from Noah Brown or Simi Fehoko on Thursday, but this was kind of real first team action. That's what the joint practice was for. We'll see. I think these players further down the roster, the way they are, I think have more opportunities to shine on Saturday night throughout the preseason game. By the way, we will be live here on the Blog of the Boys YouTube channel following the preseason game. We are live after every single Dallas Cowboys game, so we would encourage you to join us. Let's see. Tiffany Silver says the boys looked horrible, lost the same way we lost to the Broncos last season. I don't think they looked horrible. I think they looked, it partly looked like a practice, and I think that was a great moment between Dak and CeeDee Lamb. Now, Noah Brown did get some run with the starting offense. I think that's important to say, but there was still no real main kind of bright shining moment for him, and that's okay. Look, you have to contextualize this with the fact that it is still a practice. It's a joint practice, and it is one team against another, but there's no reason to freak out one way or another in a positive or negative way and say, oh man, it's nothing but sunshine or nothing but doom and gloom. It's all relevant. It's all important data. It's all important information that we can use to kind of put together more of an overall package. Now, we saw the Dak CeeDee highlight. I mentioned that Noah Brown got some work with the starting offense. He could have made a little bit of a larger effort on this play. I'll just leave it at that. This was not the best moment for Noah Brown.
That's the reality. This is their preseason. You might see them get a couple snaps here and there. No.
Oh. Thrown over the top.
That was almost an interception for Dak Prescott. That's Justin Simmons of the Denver Broncos, who couldn't come down with it. But yeah, Noah, do something, dude. I mean, and granted, that wasn't actually an interception, but it could have been. So not, again, I think that both things can be true, because this kind of turns into this argument that people have. Well, CeeDee's going to be amazing, blah, 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 blah. Okay, awesome. That's true. That's one of the true things. But it's also true that there isn't a lot of depth here. And that's why we do have wide receiver as one of the options for you to vote for in terms of things that you're most concerned about. It is, we've got swing tackle, wide receiver, kicker, and other. I don't know what your other would be. Maybe it would be, it can't be linebacker depth. It can't be the secondary. Maybe it's the fact that they won't use Tony Pollard the right way. We'll get to that subject in just a little bit. But right now, swing tackle leading the vote here on the Blog of the Boys YouTube channel, 55% as far as what position are you the most worried about. Noah Brown, not exactly easing your concerns if you did vote for wide receiver. So moving on, it's important to say that this was the first time that both the Cowboys and Broncos got to practice against, or really not even practice, really play against somebody that was not their own team, right? And that's what we talked about this during Wednesday's video here on the channel. That's what part of what made this exciting. That's part of what makes this interesting. That's part of what makes this an opportunity to learn something. Well, Mike McCarthy said when the Cowboys were still in Oxnard, when they were still in California, he said, we're not going to Denver to fight. We're not doing that. We're not, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Well, Mike McCarthy was wrong.
The Broncos, here's some pushing and shoving.
Here we go, baby.
That's it. It was going to happen at some point, and it happens on this field. Couple players, one from both teams, hitting the ground, and we'll see if we can get this sorted out.
I think Terrence Steele was right smack dab in the middle of that one.
It was Terrence Steele. Yes, sir.
Keep that in mind, because this is an offensive line.
It's difficult to gauge who was at fault in all of this because, again, the reporting on site so limited because of the way the Broncos controlled this. This was their practice facility or practice setup and whatnot. And so it's difficult to know who totally was at fault, but there were several different skirmishes. And again, I think there's some understandable tension that was brewing and boiling between the Cowboys and the Broncos. And I don't think that had anything to do with opposing players or whatever. It's their first opportunity to flex and play somebody that isn't themselves. But it's worth mentioning that there were several different skirmishes, and that doesn't suggest that the Cowboys are wrong or the Broncos are wrong, but it is worth talking about because this is was one of the most penalized teams in the NFL last year, the Dallas Cowboys. And Mike McCarthy has talked about that as a point of emphasis on them. They've had officials out of practices like every NFL team to this point throughout camp. You cannot be getting into these skirmishes. This is going to cost you in an NFL game, and you may not be the person, this is like a classic childhood lesson. You may not be the person who throws the first punch, but you might be the person who gets caught. And you're going to cost your team yardage, and you're going to cost your team the ability to score points. Gabriel P. offers, looks like the boys got a little bullied out there today, and that's part of what's like not great about the skirmishes, the tussling, however you want to put it, is that I mean, it did kind of look that way. And again, we're basing it off of the presentation from the Cowboys stream on their social properties. It's difficult to get the whole picture when that's the case, but it is worth mentioning, and that's why I go back to the point that John Owning brought up. The Cowboys are the team that had to adjust to the elevation, and that's not a new thing. That's not an excuse or anything like that, but it is worth talking about out loud that, they were maybe in a little bit of a different situation as far as circumstance relative to their shape is concerned that the Broncos players were. Let's see here. Texas Trill 12 says Broncos wanted to fight. They didn't care about trying to get good work in. I don't know about that. I can't speak to the Broncos' intentions, but they definitely seemed more antsy. They definitely seemed more willing to fight than the Cowboys. So I will give the Cowboys that, and then they at least exhibited a little bit more patience as far as starting things. Now, they were not declining any opportunity to get involved into things. But still, hopefully it was just kind of the first practice, bit of action against somebody else, jitters kind of getting out. Let's see. Huzzah says, I was working. I saw Zaddy Dak drop a dime. Dak Prescott was on fire. I really thought this was a great practice for Dak Prescott, and that's ultimately the most important thing, not to mitigate the performance of anybody else, but if Dak Prescott is rolling, then we are rolling. Dak Prescott, we already showed this, but still it's worth mentioning several different times, hit CeeDee Lamb for a touchdown that was awfully pretty. All right, so we talked about the fight. We talked about Dak Prescott. Let's see here. Let me get this off the screen. There's one thing we have to get to, because I think some people, there's a Josh Ball thing that we're going to get to in just a moment. But before we do, I want to talk about Bradley Chubb. He had a bit of a shot. You could call it that. You could call this it's something that I don't think you'd be cool with. Bradley Chubb hitting Zeke Elliott. It's a bit of a quick sort of thing, so pay attention. I know the video is choppy. Again, we're dealing with what we can here because we've got to, figure out a way to talk about this. But ultimately, I think this is just you don't do this in a training camp practice sort of thing. But, Zeke Elliott, to his credit, popped right back up.
Yes, Zeke and TP out there at the same time.
Toss back to Zeke. Oh, and he took a hit from Bradley Chubb.
See, I just don't think you do that. I don't think that that's cool in a training camp practice, but that's just me. Hey, that's just how I feel about it. I'll play it one more time. Bradley
Zeke and TP out there at the same time.
Toss back to Zeke. Oh, and he took a hit from Bradley Chubb.
Yeah, I'm just not a fan of that. I don't think that is it's a bit of a bang bang thing, but let's just be cool here. Now let's see. Brady O'Price says Connor McGovern is not it. Also, Josh Ball needs to go find another team because he was awful today. How did the rookie look? It's hard to judge him next to Josh Ball. Now, I had this written down myself, Brady. Here you go. Josh Ball did not exactly play well, so I just want, we're on the same wavelength. We talk about things that we're concerned about, right? And our poll question here today is, what position are you most worried about currently? And if you're rewatching this, you don't see it. The poll options are only available to the live audience for some reason. That's the way YouTube works. But the four choices here are swing tackle, wide receiver, kicker, or other. Your choice, obviously, for whatever you want other to be. At present time, swing tackle has 50% of the vote, and I think that it does because it is just Josh Ball. Right now, there is not an option. You literally cannot name a competing option with Josh Ball for the Cowboys swing tackle job. Yes, Matt Waletzko was technically one of those options, but he got hurt very early on. And so we haven't seen him really have that opportunity. And I think it's fair to say that Josh Ball deserves an opportunity in the preseason, in an actual game, albeit an exhibition game, to try and sort of earn his place or show what he's got. But this was a horrible bed for the Cowboys to make, and we've talked about that. That's why these are the options for our poll. Swing tackle, receiver, and kicker were positions that the Cowboys did not address really at all throughout the entire offseason. Yes, they drafted Matt Waletzko, great. But still, the Cowboys' big, awesome, super well thought out plan at swing tackle here on a team where their left tackle has missed time each of the last 6 years in a row was a second-year fourth-round player who didn't play last year and a rookie fifth-round pick. That was a house of cards. I mean, it was just always going to not work out. And so here we are. Matt Waletzko is not even an option, and Josh Ball's playing poorly. There was a moment, again, I don't know which member of the Denver Broncos this was, but trying to catch up here. After Josh Ball seemingly got worked, a member of the Denver Broncos in an act of really just extreme unkindness and disrespect made a hand gesture. It seemed like pointing, kind of pointing a gun, like your hand, like your pistols or whatever. So I don't know the full story there. I imagine that we'll hear some of this over the next few hours or so. But that is just, Josh Ball's performance aside, that there's no place for that here. But this is a problem. I mean, the Cowboys are in a bit of a place where they need some serious swing tackle help. You look at, and I'm not saying that the New York Jets are the team that we're supposed to be the most jealous of or anything like that, but Mekhi Becton gets hurt, and what's the first thing they do? They go ahead and throw all this money at Dwayne Brown. 2 years, $22 million. That's a lot of money to commit to Dwayne Brown, right? But you need the depth. You need somebody on your team. And right now the Cowboys are up a creek and do not have an extra paddle in their boat. And it is not a matter of if. I hate to say, and I know you all hate to agree, it is not a matter of if, it is a matter of when Tyron Smith is going to miss time. And not only that, I don't know that we can totally, absolutely, 100% unequivocally count on Terrence Steele on the right side either. So this is kind of this really shaky foundation. We talk about Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb and how there's going to be all this success between them. And there is, if there's enough time for Dak Prescott to obviously get these passes off. But the way the offensive line is structured so loosely, it's hard to count on that being the case week in and week out, especially when you're going up against some top pass rushers. So Josh Ball, I think the biggest stock down of the session. Not a great day for Josh Ball, and not a great camp so far for Josh Ball. You look at really last year's draft class is not faring all too well outside of Micah Parsons and Osa Odighizuwa. We've talked about them forever. Simi Fehoko kind of coming along, but I mean the two biggest stock downs I think all throughout camp, now counting this joint practice against the Denver Broncos, are Kelvin Joseph and Josh Ball. So the class of 2021 is being weighed down by them. It's definitely being boosted by the likes of Micah Parsons, obviously, but it could use some help in some different ways. Last video to show, and this is oriented weirdly, so apologies for that. But Terrell Basham had a tip drill interception, so that's always cool. We always want to celebrate that. Yeah, I know it's oriented weirdly. I feel like when you put your hands behind somebody and you're like moving them and they're doing all the talking. I don't know why the internet acts that way. But next sort of takeaway for me as we get to our comments. Joey Stewart, by the way, says who is out there for swing tackle. This is kind of the same. This is the question that people bring up. People that, and I'm not saying that Joey's doing this, but people who are wanting to defend every move that the Cowboys make, kind of like the kicker situation from this past week, right? Well, who's out there? Who do you suggest they sign? RJ, blah blah blah. And I don't want to sit here and just be critical of the Cowboys. I would love to sit here and praise this team and say, hey, they made all these great decisions and they're all working out. They're super smart. They're super innovative. They're super forward thinking, blah, blah, blah. There's nobody who we're going to feel good about. There's nobody, and I'm not trying to go off on you, Joey. You might just be, just straight up asking the question, but there's no answer to this question. Even Dwayne Brown, who signed with the New York Jets today, comes with question marks, right? You're at a point in time, if you're signing somebody in the second week of August, there is a reason that you are signing them. Even, Anthony Barr, we're all excited about that, but, there's concerns about him not necessarily being able to, be the same player anymore, but that's okay because of what he's being asked to do. And you cannot find somebody in August who you can come in and be amazing for you at such an important position, which is why you have to have this approach that we're talking about in March and in April. You cannot just be idle and hope that it's all going to work out. Hope is not a strategy. And the Cowboys kind of were at this saying, think about it. Like, really think about this. The only addition that the Cowboys made in the tackle department this entire offseason, and that includes, by the way, cutting Lyle Collins, the only addition that they made was drafting Matt Waletzko, who is hurt, and so he's unavailable to them. But I mean, do we really? And look, I hope Matt Waletzko has a phenomenal career. He's obviously an incredible athlete. There's a lot to like about him, once he regains health. But would Matt Waletzko be the answer? Are we really a Matt Waletzko away from all of these problems being solved? No, we're not, because you had to address this in a bigger fashion over the course of the entire offseason. You had to be aggressive at the very beginning of it all. You cannot, in the middle of the 6th inning, put together your plan for the entire game, which is kind of how the Cowboys are looking at doing this. Brandon R., a lot of people bring this up, but it says, do we think this is a low-key rebuild year? It seems that way. It's... I don't buy the the Cowboys are trying to tank or whatever, Sean Payton, blah. I don't ever buy that kind of stuff. I just think they're a little bit bad at this, and I think they're very good at it in some ways. That they, and that's what's, to go back. Gabriel P brings up that's poor player personnel management. And I agree with that. Where I think it's always frustrating is the Cowboys seem to take one step forward and then 3 steps back. When the Cowboys signed Anthony Barr, I did a TikTok on this subject, and I did, it was centered around 5 reasons why this is exciting. 5 reasons why the Anthony Barr move is really exciting for the Dallas Cowboys specifically. And one of the reasons was that it kind of proved that the Cowboys were getting it, right? Do the Cowboys need depth at linebacker right now? No. Are they really pressing for help or an answer at the linebacker position right now to date? No, they're not. But Anthony Barr solves a problem that does not exist, and that's the right way to build your roster. That's the right way to be preventative, to be forward-thinking, to be always considering would-be options, hypotheticals, the worst possible case scenario, and preparing for that, to be proactive. But if you're completely and totally reactive, then you're just chasing your tail, and you're just kind of, robbing Peter to pay Paul kind of thing, and that's where the Cowboys are at. They have an excessive amount of salary cap space, and yet they choose to kind of be here in this particular moment, and they're stuck. They have no real depth at the swing tackle position, and our poll today is, what position are you most worried about? With a 49% vote so far, swing tackle is the answer of all of you who are a part of the live show. But let's move on to something positive. So Josh Ball didn't play well. That's okay. I think it's becoming more and more and more obvious that the Cowboys may have just struck gold. I mean, like Charlie buying, the bar of chocolate, finding the golden ticket. Kevontae Turpin might be this really, really, really fun piece for Kellen Moore, for the Cowboys offense as a whole. I think that was really on display throughout the joint practice against the Denver Broncos. As long as the Cowboys use him properly, which is something we're going to talk about in a little bit with Tony Pollard, there's a lot of potential there. There are some players that are just fast, that are just whose speed is difficult to explain, or speed is difficult to understand, or whatever. And Kevontae Turpin has that kind of different speed. I mean, just it is unlike what the other players have. And so, yeah, let's see that. Let's utilize it. And what's funny, again, is they've kind of stumbled into this situation, is Kevontae Turpin, when he was first signed, when training camp barely started, it was like, well, he's coming in to just work on returns. And then the James Washington injury happens, and now he's all involved in jet sweeps and pitches and things like that. Use Kevontae Turpin. Find ways to utilize that speed over and over and over again. There's not a player on the field who can run shot for shot with him. And so, find a way. That's really what this comes down to in different respects. Find a way to utilize Kevontae Turpin. Are the Cowboys finding a way to utilize Tony Pollard? This is a question that we have asked ourselves till we have been blue in the face. And I don't know. I don't know what to believe. I want to believe, to be very clear here. I want to believe that the Cowboys have identified the right, proper, true way to utilize Tony Pollard. And something did catch my eye late Wednesday night. Today's Thursday, right? The Dallas Morning News wrote about this, and we'll put it up on the screen for you here. Michael Gelkin of the DMN, how the Cowboys are working Tony Pollard in a way that a lot of us have said before in the slot. You don't want to use Tony Pollard as your top running back, Cowboys? Fine, but there are other ways to utilize him, all right? The Cowboys, as the Dallas Morning News writes, have been tutoring Tony Pollard in the slot. In fact, the first line of the article reads, offensive quality control coach Kyle Valero has been privately tutoring Pollard on the slot position, preparing him for potential responsibilities to complement his primary role in the backfield. Increased slot work for Pollard can clear a path for him and running back Ezekiel Elliott to share the field more in 2022. And when you have this conversation, when you talk about this with people, it does kind of tend to turn into Pollard versus Zeke. One is good, one is trash, one is amazing, one is terrible. Nobody's saying that here, all right? They can both be great players. They can both be fine players. They can both be contributors to this Cowboys offense and to the success of this team as a whole. But you need them both. If you're going to find a way to use Kevontae Turpin, like we were just talking about a few minutes ago, you sure as hell better find a way to utilize Tony Pollard. And so I think that this is a good thing. This is a positive thing. Now, we've been burned by this before, right? Like, we've believed that the Cowboys were working on a way to utilize Tony Pollard, and we've seen him on the field simultaneously with Zeke Elliott, but it has faded over the course of a season. And so I want to believe, I would love nothing more to believe, but we've been hurt before. I'm willing to live again, but I'm scared. I'm scared. Let's see here. Joey Stewart says swing tackle is the answer every year. I think what Joey's talking about our poll question today, by the way. Swing tackle means not good enough to be a starter. There is just not enough of them out there. Well, here's the thing, Joey. Again, we're talking about a team here in the Dallas Cowboys that has had to utilize their swing tackle every single year for the last 6 years. So you can say it's not a starter. You can say, whatever. It's obviously not, right? If you're a swing tackle, you're not a starting tackle on your team. But if you're the Dallas Cowboys and you understand the way your roster is built, you understand the pros and cons that come with Tyron Smith, then you have to understand that a swing tackle is far more important for you than it is for an average NFL team, because Tyron Smith has missed so much time. It isn't just a one-off thing. It isn't something that happened randomly. It isn't something that, is coming out of the blue. No, you can set your watch by the fact that Tyron Smith is going to miss somewhere around 3 to 5 games here in 2022. And if you don't prepare for that, then that's on you. And preparing for that does not mean just running it back with Josh Ball and drafting Matt. Well, let's go. So let's see. Smoke 14. Yeah. So I don't know if that's like a 14. Yeah. I don't know if that's like a word. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. It says, LOL, we just started training camp, y'all. Cuts will come and we can find talent through cuts and practice squad players as well. I'm not panicking just yet. To be very clear here, I'm not panicking by any means. This roster can win the NFC East, all right? Like, that's fine. But a lot of people sit and talk like, was that what you want? Do you want to just win the division? Is that enough for you? Blah, blah, blah. Those are fair questions. But I'll ask you, Smoke 14, I'll ask you, Joey Stewart, who is somebody that has been cut in kind of standard 53-man roster decisions that the Cowboys have picked up in recent years that has gone on to make an incredible mark? Who is somebody who is somebody who the Cowboys have signed after the preseason's over, a week before the regular season, that has just come in and completely and totally made a difference? To your point, I mean, and a lot of people bring this up. This is an interesting discussion, right? Because that's true. It's true to say, you know what? There are talented players who are going to be cut by NFL teams because they're going to have surpluses at other positions. They're going to have to make hard choices, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's fine. I'm with you. But give me an example. Name one. I mean, because the players who the Cowboys bring in at this point in time have not made these impacts that we're talking about here. I mean, they have not. They simply have not. And so you cannot, again, that's not really planning. That's just hoping. That's saying, I hope that an NFL team cuts somebody who I can use. Get off, and get off the proverbial pot and make your own decision, Cowboys. Quit waiting for somebody else to set you up for success. Go take it. Let's see. Michael Diorio, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. He says, basically, we have maybe 1 or 2 changes on offense from last year when you have Tyler Smith and or a Tolbert or Houston. I don't think you can count Dennis Houston as part of like the starting offense, but definitely involved. We'll see. Dennis Houston, we did a video here on Wednesday about players who need to have an impressive game on Saturday, and I think Dennis Houston's in that mix. He's definitely coveted. I think the worst case scenario for Dennis Houston is making the practice squad, but with an impressive preseason, he'll make it difficult to not carry him on the 53-man roster. But yeah, I mean, you're talking about, you ran it back, and you can make an argument that you improved long-term at left guard from Connor Williams to Tyler Smith as I fight off a sneeze, but I know there aren't a lot of Cowboys fans who want to hear this. Right now, today, you are worse at left guard, even with Tyler Smith. I know Connor Williams had 1 billion penalties, but he was a pretty solid left guard. And so, again, that's not to say that Tyler Smith won't eventually be better than Connor Williams, but you are technically worse right there. So you're technically worse at left guard. You're technically worse at right tackle. You're definitely worse at swing tackle because you don't have Terrence Steele to play that position. You're counting on Josh Ball. If you want to argue you're the same at receiver because CeeDee Lamb's going to take this evolution and you're banking on Michael Gallup coming back, that's fine. I think that's an interesting way to look at it. Maybe you think you're better because Tony Pollard's going to be involved in the slot like we already talked about here. That's one way to look at this. But yeah, you're running it back and you're expecting everything to kind of work out just because you want it to. Michael adds, I don't get it. You have maybe one or two changes on offense when you have Tyler Smith. That's kind of the same point. How does anyone expect a change in physicality? I think you could make an argument actually based off of Tyler Smith here, who had a lot of penalties, right, in college. That was like one of the big knocks on him coming out of Tulsa was that's his thing, right? Like he's a little bit more physical. He's a little bit more like aggressive. He's a little bit more in your face. So maybe that's going to kind of change things, but that's only one player to your point. So I agree with that. Jennifer Yelvington says teams are not letting go of any offensive lineman that could start for another team. That's my point as well. Like you cannot, I agree with Jennifer. You cannot just say, oh, you know what? We don't have swing tackle figured out. We'll be good. Somebody's going to cut a swing. Somebody's going to cut a borderline starting tackle in the NFL, and we'll just scoop them up in free agency right before the regular season starts. And we'll be totally fine. And again, maybe the Cowboys defy the odds this year, right? Like maybe Tyron Smith stays healthy. Maybe Terrence Steele stays healthy and takes another step in his third year, the way he did after his first into his second year. All those things exist in the infinite world of possibilities, right? There's a timeline out there where Tyron Smith and Terrence Steele are healthy and balling all throughout 2022. But play the odds. What's the most likely thing to happen? What are the most likely outcomes here? And when you do that, when you perform that exercise, you say, what's the most likely thing? Okay, well, most likely thing is Tyron Smith's going to miss some time. Terrence Steele might miss time. Terrence Steele might not take that step. Let's have some preventative measures in place. Let's have some safety nets. Let's take precaution now so that if those situations arise, we are prepared for them. And again, what's frustrating is the Cowboys have seemingly done this at the linebacker position, right? They've done this. They've said, you know what, Leighton Vander Esch, he's got a history of being hurt. We don't know what's going to happen. Yes, he did play every single game last year, but, we don't want to take that chance. And yeah, we're really excited about Jabril Cox, but what if he doesn't take a step? What if his comeback from the injury takes a little bit of time? Anthony Barr gives us that extra room for error. Apply that same logic to swing tackle. Apply that same logic to wide receiver. Apply that same logic to kicker. You can do it with all of them. There's no rule that you can only do it with one position. Let's see here. Smoke 14 says, we got that left guard. I think you're talking about Xavier Suafilo is the name. Definitely a difficult one. He was not bad. And Leary, too, remember. Ron Leary was an undrafted free agent who the Cowboys signed. He wasn't somebody they picked up in that instance. Kevin Myers says, this offensive line is nowhere ready to start this season. I watched the practice with the Broncos, and their defense stayed in our backfield. SMBH. Shaking my butt. I don't know what SMBH is, but, whatever. I don't know that I'm willing to say the offensive line isn't ready to start the season. That feels like a bridge too far for me. I think that they definitely need some work. They definitely need some time. And I think that the elevation is a factor. I'm not trying to make an excuse for them, but I think that, there are a lot of things at play here. So I'm not ready. Bald head. Thank you, Kevin. Oh, well, hey, shaking my bald head. So that's very specific. Thank you. Thank you for the specifics. I'm not ready to panic, but I am concerned about the depth, and today highlighted that. The fact that Josh Ball, and we already talked about this, but we'll put this up here again, Josh Ball did not exactly play well is the nicest way that I could possibly put this as far as how he fared throughout the practice with the Denver Broncos. I mean, our poll question today, we're going to end the poll now. What position are you most worried about? The poll is officially over. 48% of the vote. Actually, it fell down to 47% of the vote said swing tackle. Second place, if you care, is wide receiver at 28%, and kicker is 16%. Other 7%. I'd be curious what your other answers were. It's a tough deal. Alex Storm says they did not try with kicker RJ Garibay. It didn't work out. It did not mean they didn't try to address it. See, this is a point that a lot of people have raised this week. And Alex, I disagree with you. Jonathan Garibay was not them taking the kicker position seriously. The most serious thing that the Cowboys did at the kicker position last year. Actually, before I speak this sentence. Last year, among kickers who attempted at least 1.5 extra points per game. So basically, among kickers who started most of the games for their teams last year, right? That's kind of what that means. Among those kickers, Greg Zuerlein had the worst extra point conversion percentage in the NFL. He was literally the worst extra point kicker in the league among starting kickers. Okay, they moved on. Beyond the fact that they moved on, they reportedly wanted to bring him back, which is a big enough indictment in and of itself. But after that, they did not make any serious investment. They didn't sign anybody in free agency, anybody notable in free agency. They didn't draft anybody. Their plan was to hit the lotto. That was not a plan. Just because they signed an undrafted free agent does not mean that they deserve credit. Just because they literally did something does not mean that they actually, in a larger sense, did something. And the same way they approach that is the same way they approach swing tackle, is the same way they approach the receiver depth chart, which is why now we're looking at these positions. All of this was predictable. You could see all this coming from a mile away. I'm not some genius. I'm not somebody who's smart enough to run an NFL front office. That's not what I'm saying, but these are all really obvious things. It's easy to say, well, that 2 plus that 2 plus that 2 equals 6. That's all we're doing here. It was super obvious to see where the holes were going to be on this team, and they're showing themselves here before we even get to mid-August. Let's see. Huzzah says, do you think defenses will be sending 5 to nothing? I think, are you saying like defense is going to be blitzing? I don't think you have to blitz. I don't think you have to blitz this team. I mean, if Josh Ball's in there. So that's that. Smoke 14 says, Owen Turpin is the truth. Get him the ball. That is all. I agree with that. Kevin Meyer says the entire offensive line instead of swing tackle would have received more votes. LOL. Glenn Lewis says, what happened to Tristan Hill? Nothing that I've seen. And again, you know, we're live here currently, and I don't see anything. By the way, we do have an update on Ian Bunting. Let me get this off the screen here. Let me get Josh Ball off so we don't just, whatever. But Ian Bunting, tight end Ian Bunting, did leave the practice field against the Broncos. Michael Gelkin of the Dallas Morning News tweeting right now, he's dealing with neck soreness after it being hit during a punt return period. X-rays were negative. John Ridgway had the other injury. We talked about that at the beginning of the show. He did walk off under his own power. Both will continue to be evaluated, so it sounds like nothing serious. We will, of course, keep you updated at bloggingtheboys.com and Blogging the Boys social properties. Neville Gallimore was asked about the altitude. We've been talking about this altitude and how it's a factor. He said, I thought I was tripping. Is it just me? I'm looking around and the check engine light came on. I was like, hold on. I guess that's why they call it Mile High. Tweet from the Dallas Morning News is David Moore. So look, I mean, the altitude is a factor, and so it was a best practice for the Cowboys. I think it's difficult to say it was bad because we got to see the Dallas Cowboys play against another team. We got to learn. We got to yield information. We got a new set of data to be able to make conclusions and draw ideas off of. And so in that sense, it was positive. Were there things we did not like? Obviously. We've talked about Josh Ball. We've talked about Noah Brown. We've talked about, kind of getting outworked a little bit. And you can kind of explain away some of those things like the altitude and whatnot. And so I don't think that, any of us should be sitting here and being like, this team sucks. This team's not going anywhere, blah, blah, blah. Look, they got a preseason game on Saturday. We're going to learn a lot about the Cowboys. You want to talk about learning? We're going to learn a lot about them on Saturday night. We're going to learn a lot about them next week as they scrimmage against the LA Chargers. We're going to learn a lot about them when they play against them. We have a few weeks to go, about a month to go before the regular season starts. In fact, we have exactly a month. Today is August 11th. The season begins on September 11th against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So we'll see what other answers and what other data we can glean and learn and yield between now and then. Every day is learning opportunity. Nothing means doom and gloom. Nothing means everything's terrible and the Cowboys suck and blah, blah, blah. They have done some things that we disagree with. We have every right to disagree with what the Cowboys are doing because we're fans. We want to see them succeed. We want that more than most things in life. And so if they're not doing the things that we think that can make them better, we're going to say that. We're going to talk about that, which is what makes being a fan obviously a lot of fun. So thank you to those of you who voted in our poll today. We're going to start having polls every single stream. And by every single stream, in case you did not know, we do this every day. We jump on live every single afternoon, and that is going to be the case throughout the regular season as well, to talk about the latest and the greatest in the world of the Dallas Cowboys. So if you have time during your day to jump on YouTube to hang out with us, this is a YouTube exclusive, by the way, here on the Blog and the Boys YouTube channel. We would love to hang out with you every single day. If you have to catch the rewatch, hey, no big deal. You're busy. We understand that. We just want to make sure that we give you the content that you need as a Dallas Cowboys fan. So if you haven't yet, please do subscribe here to the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel. We're very excited about this season. If you can, please do like this video, all that stuff. I know it sounds cheesy. I know that every single person on the internet says it, but hey, guess what? It matters. It works. It's helpful. And so if you can do those things for us, it definitely makes us feel rather good. We also have a podcast. And by the way, on the subject of the podcast, I can't tell you who, but I can tell you that we are going to have a very, very, very special guest on the Blogging the Boys podcast network next Monday. In fact, we'll also drop that interview for you here on the YouTube channel. It will only be audio, unfortunately, but I'll just say this. It's an interview with a current Dallas Cowboys starter on the offensive side of the ball that may or may not be the most important player on the team. So if you want to hear that, make sure to subscribe, whether it's here to the YouTube channel, on the podcast network. That will be coming your way next Monday, and we'll also have some stuff up on the side around that as well. But beyond that, the Cowboys do play on Saturday in a preseason game against the Denver Broncos. So between now and then, we'll have another live show on Friday to kind of talk about what's going on. And then we'll be here live after the game ends. We'll also, if you're on Twitter, have a Twitter Spaces on the Blogging the Boys Twitter account. We'll also have an Instagram Live on the Blogging the Boys Instagram account. Wherever you consume content, we want to make sure that you are covered when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys. My name is RJ Ochoa. You know me from all throughout the Blogging the Boys universe. You can follow me on Twitter or Instagram at RJ Ochoa. You can follow me on TikTok at rj.ochoa. If you want to email me, you have any thoughts, questions, comments, points of constructive criticism, you can, rj.ochoa@sbnation.com. You can always leave a comment down below, and we'll get to those also. But for now, I hope that you have I hope you have a great day. I really do. I hope you have a wonderful day and a wonderful night and a wonderful afternoon, wonderful morning, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. See you next time.